Welcome to The Critical Path, Project Management and Leadership in Complex Environments. Episode 18, Integration is where optimism goes to die. Today, we are talking about integration, the moment in complex delivery when confidence often meets reality. On paper, everything can look healthy. Work packages are progressing, suppliers are delivering, design reviews are complete, and dashboards are green. But then the system is connected and suddenly assumptions collide. Interfaces do not align. Data does not flow. Environments behave differently. And teams discover that finished does not mean works together. In major programs, this is where optimism is tested. Integration is not a late-stage technical activity. It is where complexity becomes visible, where leadership matters most, and where the true critical path usually reveals itself. One of the most persistent illusions in complex programs is the belief that progress at component level equals progress at system level. Teams complete their tasks, so systems lead report status, suppliers meet local milestones, and the plan appears to move forward. But complex delivery does not succeed because each part works in isolation. It succeeds when those parts work together under realistic conditions with all the friction, dependency, and unpredictability that real operations create. That is why integration is often the real critical path. It is also why optimism tend to die there. Integration is the point where hidden assumptions are exposed. One team might design to one interpretation of an interface, while another team designs to a different one. Software may perform correctly in a lab environment, but fail once connected to real hardware. A supplier may deliver on time, but with data structures, tolerances, or operating conditions that do not match what the receiving team expected. None of these issues are always visible in isolated reporting. They become visible only when the system is brought together. This is where interface risk becomes so important. Many program risks do not sit neatly inside one work package. They live in the space between teams, between systems, between organizations, and sometimes between what was written down and what people assume without ever saying aloud. That is dangerous because most governance structures are better at managing components than they are at managing interactions. Leadership teams often underestimate these because integration problems tend to emerge late, after confidence has already built. By that point, cost has been spent, schedules have narrowed, stakeholder expectations are high, and there is very little room left for learning. When integration fails late, it is rarely because one team was careless. More often, it is because the program allowed uncertainty to survive too long at the boundaries. A second issue is emergent behaviour. In complex systems, even when each element performs correctly on its own, the overall system can behave in ways nobody fully predicted once everything is connected. Timing mismatches, data latency, environmental noise, operational sequencing, or unexpected user interactions can create effects that were invisible during design and subsystem testing. This is not necessarily failure of competence. It is often the natural behavior of complexity. But if leaders treat integration as a final confirmation rather than a learning phase, the program becomes fragile. The test environment matters here as well. Many integration surprises happen because systems are tested in conditions that are too clean, too controlled, or too different from reality. If the real mission environment includes degraded communications, variable loads, human intervention, temperature variation, or incomplete data, then the testing only in ideal conditions create false confidence. This is where the phrase "test like you fly" becomes so powerful. If you only test the best case version of the system, you are not really testing the system that will be used. A practical response starts with integration first planning. Instead of treating integration as the end of delivery, plan around it from the beginning. Ask early, what are the most critical interfaces? Where are the biggest assumptions gaps? And what do we need to prove together before the program becomes schedule constrained? That means designing integration milestones that are about learning, not just compliance. It is also means assigning real interface ownership. Interfaces need named owners with authority to coordinate definitions, resolve ambiguity, and drive alignment across teams. Without that, interface problems often sit in organizational gaps until they become schedule problems. Early end-to-end demonstrations are another powerful discipline. Even partial demonstrations can expose major weaknesses sooner than perfect paper reviews. A rough but real connection between subsystems often teaches more than months of local progress reporting. It shifts the program from assumption to evidence. A good real-world style example will be an aerospace program delivering a mission planning capability tied to onboard systems, ground software, and external communications links. Individually, each team reports strong progress. The onboard software passes its internal tests. The ground-based planning tool meets its specification. The communication provider confirms message handling within agreed parameters. Yet, during late integration, the teams discover that each has considered timing and message acknowledgement differently. The ground system assumes near immediate confirmation. The onboard system batches updates to protect processor load. The communication layer introduces intermittent latency under realistic operating conditions. None of these behaviors are wrong on their own, but together they produce an unreliable workflow. Operators see incomplete updates, retry commands, and create duplicate actions in the system. Now, the issue is not just technical. Trust drops. Senior stakeholders want explanations. Teams become defensive because each can prove its own subsystem worked as designed. Schedule pressure rises because resolving the issue requires cross-team diagnosis, revised interface logic, and retesting in a more representative environment. The real lesson is not that integration found a bug. It is that the program discovered too late that it had never truly aligned on how the system was supposed to behave end to end. That is why integration is such a leadership test. It demands humility because green status at local level may mean very little. It demands discipline because learning must happen before the program runs out of room. And it demands systems thinking because delivery lies not in the parts, but in the connections between them. If there is one thing to take from this episode, it is this. Do not confuse progress with compatibility. This week, look at one project or system you are involved in and ask 3 questions. Where are the most important interfaces? Who truly owns them? And what have we actually tested end to end rather than assume will work? Even a simple conversation around those questions can expose risk that status report miss. Integration problems rarely arrive without warning. They are usually visible in weak assumptions, vague boundaries, and delayed evidence. The earlier you surface them, the more options you still have. To conclude, integration is where the real program reveals itself. It is where the confidence built in slides, plans, and work package reports is tested against reality. When leaders treat integration as a final step, they invite late surprises. When they treat it as the center of delivery, they create better decisions, earlier learning, and more resilient outcomes. The message is simple. The system is the product, not the parts. So plan integration early, own interfaces clearly, test in realistic conditions, and use end-to-end evidence to guide decisions. Because in complex environments, success is not that everything works separately. It is that everything works together. Thanks for listening to The Critical Path. project management and leadership in complex environments. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow or rate the show on Spotify and share it with colleagues who work where reliability matters most. See you on the next episode of The Critical Path.